Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to One Exclusive. Now, with us in studio this evening is President of the All People's Party, Ignatius Shixwameni, who was also the chairperson of the first Parliamentary Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and Defence, as well as former Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Broadcast and Information. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us. Mr. Shixwameni, let's get right into it. Now, the All People's Party was originally formed by members of SWAPO, members of Congress of Democrats. You yourself, you were a member of NANSO. And through this, you have formed a party which I am presuming now has its own unique mandate. Let's talk about what your party stands for.
Well, our party's main credo is just wealth redistribution. The currently hot topic of the country, actually. We raised it at our formation that actually what's wrong with our country is the skewed and unequal distribution of resources. So that is our main focus, that this country have got resources enough and land mass enough to make sure that each and every Namibia actually is prosperous. That is the gist of our existence. But also to unify the Namibian people. You know, by the time of independence, I didn't know with whom I was working with, whether he was a Nganjera, whether he was a Kwambi. I just knew this person comes from this area, he comes from that area, I come from this area. But we never really bothered about knowing the exact ethnic or tribal group, for that matter, of any particular individual that we worked with. We worked in unison, working for one common goal, that is the achievement of the liberation of this country, the achievement of the freedom of this country, the independence of this country. So we never asked the question, who are you? Where do you come from? And all this kind of thing.
So the All People Party is not split so much along those ethnic lines?
No. We actually are working for the unity of the Namibian people. That irrespective of your ethnic group should actually lie in the background. You should be working, focusing on building Namibia, making sure that all Namibians are equal and all Namibians are prosperous in the real sense of the word.
But I mean, if we do now quickly just touch on that tribalism aspect, there are certain groups that feel that they have been left out since before independence. So are you saying that, you know, there is absolutely no credence to these ethnic lines being split?
No, there's truth in it. And the truth comes at the bottom that, you know, some groups really feel that whether it's before independence, they were left out already by the colonial regime, and after independence, they've even been further marginalized. You know, tribes or ethnic groups in Africa, they will always be there. They will not die a complete death. You don't choose to be born a Nganjera. You don't choose to be born a Kwangali. You are born there. And it should not actually be anything wrong. Those should actually be the building bricks for nationhood, recognizing them, admitting them that they exist, and use the diversity, both in terms of ethnicity, in terms of culture, to actually forge a unique Namibian nation. And so the complaint that is there is true, because the resources are so skewed in terms of how it is distributed. They were there, the inequalities were there before independence. And since independence, we have actually not firmly and fastly and urgently addressed those issues. Because once these inequities, economic inequities, social inequities actually were to disappear, nobody will think about, I am Kwangali, I am Sambu, I am Lozi. Because a person that's prosperous, a person that is satisfied with himself would not need to go around and say, no, but I'm being discriminated because I come from this area. because I am of this ethnic group, I am of that tribe, and all this kind of thing. Equal opportunities in terms of employment. People apply. You know, there's this story that's being talked about around the whole country, that, you know, these adverts for applications, particularly in government, are basically a useless exercise, because before the position is advertised, they've already identified somebody that's going to fill it. And people feel it that, no, I am better qualified than the other person, but the other person got taken because he comes from the right ethnic group. So there's a genuine concern that needs to be addressed. We should not, as a nation, run away from addressing the national question. The national question is fundamental in Africa and throughout the world. We cannot run away and ignore and say, no, the San, they are taken care of and all this kind of thing. No, this other group, no, they are taken care of. This piecemeal approach will not take us anywhere. We will have to address the problem frontal, confront it, genuinely speak about it openly, and find ways of how to actually address and redress the situation.
If the APP's mandate is now to, balance that social inequality of economics, we have to talk about land.
Yes.
The APP has been particularly vocal, standing up against a proposed land bill. What are your views on the land bill?
Our views on the land bill is that, of course, there must be a uniform land, program around the country, and a land regime that is uniform, that covers the whole country, urban and rural, and that it should apply throughout the country. But what we are feeling is that it's not addressed yet. You have commercial land, you have communal land, and the communal people, the land in the communal area, which is also still vast, virgin, and all this kind of thing, is completely underdeveloped. The commercial areas are developed, the farms are thriving, and all this kind of thing. So that divide needs to be actually closed off so that it's sealed, so that you have one land regime in the country. But the other issue is the issue of ancestral land rights. And I think many people misunderstand that. We are preparing actually a paper in that regard. That is not, people are misunderstood that they want to go where their ancestors lived and say, this is our land, we take it. No. You take the South African example that I normally use. People have what they call the Lands Claim Commission. People can identify, and they have the right to identify and say, our grandparents lived in this area. We were kicked out, we are locked up now in Korihas. Korihas is a desert, we cannot survive here and all this kind of thing. What can we do to such community? At least the government must find ways of compensating them, giving them, whether it's funding and them to be relocated to where they can farm productively. So there are many ways to deal with this thing. It's not really like everybody now must go to their village where the grandparents live and say,
yeah,
no,
it's not practical. Yeah.
Jacobus, you would know. We are coming back now to our ancestral land. There are many ways of addressing it. But ignoring ancestral land is actually ignoring it at the peril of the nation. Because as long as people whose grandparents were forced off this land are now put in desertic areas and they cannot make a living, they live in poverty, there will come a time that they would revolt. They will say, no, enough is enough. Even the apartheid government sent them in the deserts, in barren lands and in blocks of land where they could not move without passes and all this kind of thing. Yet, an independent government, a black government that is supposed to understand this problem particularly, because they come from those backgrounds, is turning a blind eye to a problem that's so explosive. It's like, no, we leave these others who live in those Bantustans, let them live there. They cannot come back because we are now in posh houses in Ludwigsdorf, in Eros, in Olympia, in Auersblick and all this kind of thing. They tend to forget their own background, where they come from. They forget the suffering that their parents went through when they were forced off from their particular land. So ancestral land rights must be addressed. The issue of compensating families that were removed by the apartheid South African regime and put in patches like Malte, in the desert, in the middle of nowhere. Those things need to be addressed.
Definitely. I just want to ask you, yes, we do need a land regime. I do agree with you. Something national, something concrete. Is the ruling party capable of giving us that, from your point of view?
Is the ruling?
Yes, is the ruling party capable of giving us that land regime? Because I hear a lot of debate and a lot of people criticizing, but, from the opposition party's point of view, have we stepped forward and said, look, we can help you with this?
Yes, I talked about we are busy preparing a paper. Okay. That's why we have been insisting the land bill must be the last thing to come. Let's have the land conference. Let people's voices be heard first throughout the country, throughout all the four corners of the country. Let them speak out their mind, and let's reach a new consensus. We are saying, actually, the ruling party and its cohorts in 1991 made a very historic mistake at that land conference. That land conference didn't go deep into the plight of the people that were forced from their lands and settled in this barren Bantustans and all this kind of thing. It decided to close that chapter. Imagine yourself, 1 year after independence. I think the minds were not truly applied. Now that the reality has sank in for the past 27 years, people are realizing, but probably our representatives at that land conference didn't do a good job. They were not aware of what was happening, that they were actually being re-condemned by the new government to where the apartheid colonialists had forced them in. Now, can the ruling party currently deliver? They are faced with a problem, I can tell you. One is that they've been compromised. You know what is being talked about in South Africa, state capture? Actually, most of the politicians now here in the ruling party have farms in the commercial areas. They've become land barons themselves. So they are caught up. How do we balance out this thing? Then there are the pressures from the established and existing commercial farmers. So the SWAPO government, I can tell you, would not be able to deliver on land. It will have to take a miracle, because at the core of it, fundamentally, is redressing the injustices of the past land injustices. Those one that must be addressed. But you can hear their voices already saying, no, let's forget about addressing ancestral land rights. And if it's at the center, so how are you going to solve this problem? You are going to keep on buying, and at the rate that we are buying farms, I can tell you, it will take another generation. It will take actually 100 years to resolve the land question. So the issue is there must be a radical approach to this. And I'm happy with the land activists, the land movements around the country, whether they are urban, whether they are rural, wherever they are based, that they are pushing that this issue comes at the center of stage. The same ruling party say the liberation struggle was about our land. They contradict themselves, actually. It's about our land, but then give the land to the people, because they are the ones that fought for it. It's not for the senior politicians, members of the Politburo of SWAPO, members of the Central Committee of SWAPO. The land belongs to the masses, and the land must be given back to the masses.
And you say SWAPO, from your point of view, might not be capable of dealing with this land issue, but are our opposition parties strong enough? I talked to DTA and I talked to RDP, and particularly DTA says they want to absorb all the smaller parties. They want us to come together as opposition so that we can have a stronger voice in Parliament. How do you feel about that unification?
I will talk about unification, but let's still stick by the land issue.
Yes, okay.
The DTA is actually part of the problem. They were a bigger party when these negotiations took place in 1991. They were a bigger party when the Constituent Assembly was set up, which drafted the Constitution. They are two common criminals to the land problem. I challenge both SWAPO and the DTA to make public the minutes of the Constitution-making committee, the small committee that actually helped shape, because that's where compromises were made. And I'm sure that's why they are afraid to release these minutes of this particular. I remember the Prime Minister then, now the current President, was challenged several times by Honorable Kwasi Pretorius to release that minutes. I do not know what is contained in that minutes, who compromised who compromised what, and all this kind of thing. That is to start with. Now, the DTA being a common criminal to this initial conception of our independence, because the compromises that were made there actually has set us on this course of the past 27 years. The DTA had fallen, has risen. All the parties that actually the DTA is talking about, they were there in the DTA already. What went wrong with the DTA? Because the RP came out of the DTA. NUDO came out of the DTA. Most of the parties came out of the DTA because there were problems there. Now let me tell you about this swallowing of the smaller parties. Who swallows whom? Who swallows whom? But who have what support? Have we worked hard enough to really prove that this one is having this support because of X, B, Z, and all this kind of thing? We, in our constitution, I think we are the only political party that clearly states that we are open for cooperation and coalition with other political parties, whether in parliament or outside parliament and all this kind of thing. And now, our mandate works at the reverse. The top leadership don't take the decision of cooperating or not cooperating. It is enshrined in the Constitution. Should there be a call for cooperation, we will go back. There would have to be a special Congress actually to deal with that particular matter of cooperation, coalition, call it whatever you call it. But no, we don't have a top-down decision. Ours is the branches on the ground makes the decisions, make recommendations to the region, and the region makes the recommendations to the Central Committee. The Central Committee forwards it to the National Bureau, and then the National Bureau repeats the same process till the Congress is called, and the Congress then evaluates each proposal that's put there. But let me tell you, we are open-minded. We are not closed off. We would definitely not like, it's like you are made to choose between two devils. You know, we were already in SWAPO. Our SWAPO members are saying, hey, oh, our dead body, you cannot return us to SWAPO. We must march forward. And we have members from the DTA. The DTA members are also saying, to hell, you cannot take us back to the monster again. We must march forward and all this kind of thing. Now, coalition talks, opposition cooperation talks, will have to be open-minded. We will have to all apply our mind and say, look, we are in a fix here. We are fragmented, yes. What is the way forward? It's not a question of coming together for the sake of coming together. It has proven wrong already in some African countries. You had the what do you call it, the coalition against Kenyatta in what do you call it, in Kenya, the coalition against Kaunda, the Chiluba coalition. Where are they today? completely again splintered.
So you're saying unless
we
they're
must
being serious,
we must work on principles. It must not be a coalition of people who hate something. It must be, if there has to be a coalition, it must be a coalition for something, for doing a better Namibia, not against, because I hate Hage, I hate Ngolomboomba, I hate SWAPO, and all this kind of thing. No, we must be a coalition of like-minded people. We must work towards that and see how far we can get.
Mr. Shixwameni, our time is running out. I quickly, talking very well here. I quickly want to touch upon, there was a representative, Ms. Nakatana, who was very outspoken about the human rights abuses that especially the LGBTI, the homosexual community, face in our country. Now, this is a very taboo topic. Many politicians, most of them, are too scared to even talk about it. But the APP has had members that were brave enough to speak out. What is your point of view on this right now?
Actually, our point of view, that's our collective point of view as APP. We recognize all individuals in their diversity. We recognize individuals without regard to their sexuality and all this kind of thing. That is a personal choice that individuals have to make. But we also say, let these communities not be victimized, let them not be prosecuted, let them not be condemned. They are a community on themselves. Let's respect them. Now, I happen to sit on the SADC Parliamentary Forum, the standing committees, which just discussed and passed a resolution on LGBT rights in Johannesburg. And most of the parliamentarians, without any objections, there was a heated debate in Johannesburg about it about a year ago. And everybody is recognizing actually that there is no need for victimizing these people. They are a community on themselves. It's a choice that they have made themselves, whether self-conscious or whether it's by birth. You know, you hear about transgender, trans what, and all this kind of thing. So ours is respect for them. Their rights are equal human rights. And the rights of the LGBT community must be respected. They are human beings. They are not half beings. They are not animals. They come from our own houses. They come from our own houses. Why reject somebody that you have given birth to? I, for example, my cousin is the chairperson of the LGBT community around in Namibia. He used to live with us, he stays with us, he mixes with us, he does politics and all this kind of thing. So why reject him? He is one of us, he is our family and all this kind of thing. And I think people must take this as simple. They must not personalize it. If you don't like somebody because of his sexual orientation, it has got nothing to do with you. Yes, he's not bringing it to you and to your house. They are not imposing themselves on the community, on society. So why victimize? Why feel threatened? I mean, if you know this guy is a gay, why should I feel threatened because he's a gay? Because he's not approaching me, he's not advancing me and saying, hey, let's do these things together and all this kind of thing. So let's respect their human rights as human beings.
Fantastic. We're quickly going to close up because we absolutely have
Yes,
to.
okay.
Let's close up with your challenges. What are the particular challenges that the APP faces right now?
There are three main challenges, I can tell you. One is finances. Funds for running programs across the country. Two is transport, actually. I would like to be everywhere. I would like to have my team that is at head office running up and down on a weekly basis around the country. We don't have that transport. So finance, transport in that order. We have people on the ground who are ready to work. If we had the funds, I can bet you, come 2019, we shall be in government or the major political party in this country.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Mr. Shixwameni, thank you very much for your time.
It's my pleasure.
And
Thank
I
you
wish
very
your
much.
party the best for the future.
Thank you very much.
Viewers,
That's good.
viewers, that's all from us tonight on One Exclusive. Be sure to watch this episode on our social media pages or SMS your comments to 555. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you.